Hello everyone. Welcome to the first devlog of the ModularFPS series. Today I'd like to introduce you to the project I've been working on for the past few months. I'm going to cover everything in a few sections. You should be able to see the according paths on the timeline below. Let's start with something very simple but also very important in any FPS game. Here you can see the issue, weapon clipping through the wall. There are a lot of solutions to this problem, but I decided to render any of the first-person items in front of any other object. This way we can basically forget about the issue altogether. Also, by default the camera FOV is set to 110 to provide a nice wide vision range. But if we wanted to render a gun in that FOV as well, it would look pretty weird. I decided to implement a system where you can specify FOV for any object in the scene, so you can render it gun nicely. Whenever it comes to dealing with baked animations, there is a lot of issues you can encounter on the way exporting them, importing, updating, especially for something very small like aim offsets. Also takes a lot of time to set them up properly in the engine. So I decided to implement a procedural system which you can adjust to whatever you like. You can also reuse it for any item you want. When it comes to baked firing animations, I think they're even harder to deal with. Also, they're hard to control. For example, when aiming down sight, you cannot reuse the same animation. So again, I decided to make them procedural. Here is how they look right now. You can switch between firing modes. For example, the R14 rifle is by default on full auto. You can switch it to either semi or burst mode as well. Then here, just to showcase the bolt action firing mode. It doesn't really work with R14, but you could use it for snipers or shotguns. There are a lot of parameters you can use to configure shooting and adjust it to your liking. The most important, I guess, is rounds per minute. You can specify the firing rate for each mode separately. Another very important thing about firing guns is the recoil. I decided to create a designated tool for that. It works in the editor and really allows you to replicate whatever recoil you've seen in any game. Also, the hipfire recoil is separate to aiming down sight recoil, so you can really fine-tune things. But it doesn't have to be that way. You can reuse any pattern for any gun. Here is an example of what an extreme recoil pattern could look like, but it shows what the tool is capable of. And as mentioned, the downside recoil is different to the hipfire recoil in this case. Here is how the tool looks like, and as you can see, there are 3 columns because we're actually dealing with 3 kinds of recoil. The first one, which is mostly used for hipfire, is the bullet randomization. It allows for creating recoils like the one in Counter-Strike, where bullets don't often go away across the wrist. The second part is the crosshair recoil, so this is the actual camera location. And if you combine these two, you're left with a nice standard recoil pattern. The third type is, I called it gun, but you can use it for whatever really. I use it currently for animation, so whenever you fire the gun, the actual model will move as well. And this provides some more variation on top of the procedural firing animation. Next up we have the reloading and bullet in chamber logic. I wanted to implement a realistic behavior of a gun So, for example, the position of the bolt catch is procedurally driven by the ammunition amount, and I'm using separate animations for full reload as well as the tactical reload. Also, the bullet in chamber actually works like it does in real life, so given the magazine capacity of 30, you can actually have 31 bullets after a tactical reload. So to create a believable experience, you do need some custom-made animations for your guns. However, here I have an example of the GK16 pistol, which is currently being driven by two processes. One is for the default grip and the other is for aiming. Everything else is handled procedurally. The reload is instantaneous because we don't have an animation, but this can be changed as well. So at the current state of development, setting up this pistol takes around 15 minutes. The project is called Modular for a reason. Every single time I implemented something, I wanted it to be as flexible as possible. Therefore, I made two types of attachments, fixed and dynamic. Fixed attachments attach to the gun whenever it spawns, so it could be a rail, iron sights, stock, and such. This way you can customize your guns to basically infinite extent. The dynamic attachments, on the other hand, can be picked up in game, and they will modify the behavior of the gun. You can specify the behavior on weapon-to-weapon basis as well. For example, a silencer may be more effective on some guns than others. A different example is weapon optics. The default R14 iron sight zooms in just a little bit, but this holographic sight narrows down the field of view even more. Also, I created a script responsible for flipping down the iron sight whenever holographic sight is attached. Here is a little bit of an exaggeration of what you can achieve with this system. Here is an example of a modified R14 version. It's a little bit stripped. I removed the rail covers, the stock, as well as the iron sight. As you could see, the silencer for the regular R14 decreased the recoil, but for this weird version, it increases the recoil instead, and affects the sound in a different way. Another big part of the project is the movement component. I have always encountered a few issues whenever dealing with the default Unreal Engine component, so I decided to create my own. I wanted the movement to be as fluid as possible. So here we can see basic walking, running, crouching, and whenever you combine running and crouching, you get a slide. You can also climb objects. Climbing consists of three parts. The actual climbing process of going upwards. Whenever you are near to reaching the top, your character will grab the ledge, and then if you press the forward input key, you will mantle on top of the object. This movement component is capable of dealing with uneven surfaces. This, for example, is the convex collision I created for some of these rocks, and it deals with it pretty well. Whenever you are in air, you can pretty easily shift your momentum to whatever directional key you press. This makes the movement even more fluid. Currently, I haven't set a speed limit on so-called bunny hopping. It can be quite fun, but I think I'll nerf it in the future. Also, you can cancel climbing at any time by jumping and therefore gain some outwards momentum. And all of these mechanics put together an interesting movement component. It is very highly adjustable. You can change any parameter, not only the basic speeds or climb height. Another interesting little system I created is the wristwatch. It can either display real time or the in-game time. Right, thank you for watching. This is basically everything I wanted to cover in this devlog. The project is still quite early in development, but I have a lot of things planned for the future. Here are a few things I wish to work on within the next few weeks. If you wish to, please leave a reaction or a comment. And have a nice day.